Hello, all you freedom-loving people. For the first time, the DOJ brought terrorism-related charges against 2 Antifa members who shot an officer, while the DHS arrested an illegal police officer, and ICE made 20 more arrests, and President Trump talked to Putin today. Okay, let's get into it. John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor, was just indicted on 18 counts for allegedly sharing classified materials on a private email server. Each of the 18 counts that he faces carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. Based on the indictment, John Bolton sent certain individuals notes from meetings with senior members of the U.S. government. The indictment states that Bolton kept more than 1,000 pages of diaries containing top secret information, and he shared them with relatives. The charges came after authorities recovered documents and other items during a search of Bolton's home and office recently. Previously, Abbe Lowell, an attorney representing Bolton, rejected the allegations and said any thorough review will show nothing inappropriate was stored or kept by Ambassador Bolton. Bolton served as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations under President George W. Bush, and he became President Trump's National Security Advisor in 2018. Then President Trump fired Bolton in 2019, and they have criticized each other ever since. And this comes after another major indictment today. Today, for the first time, the Department of Justice brought terrorism-related charges against 2 Antifa-aligned individuals who participated in an attack on an immigration facility in Texas. That attack left an officer with a gunshot wound. The indictment was issued yesterday and unsealed today. FBI Director Kash Patel said in a statement, "This was a planned and coordinated terrorist attack on the Prairie Land Detention Center in Alvarado, Texas, where armed extremists tried to murder U.S. officers on July 4th. Cameron Arnold and Zachary Evitz are alleged to have participated in the ambush of federal agents at the ICE detention facility along with 9 others. Officials said that the suspects used fireworks as a distraction while vandalizing vehicles outside the facility. Patel also said to date the FBI has made over 20 arrests tied to this case and related to Antifa networks. No one gets to harm officers, not on our watch. These arrests were made possible because of designating them as terrorists.
And thanks to our new investigative programs under President Trump designating these guys as domestic terrorism, we have opened up multiple field investigations across the country looking at the banking and financial facilitation network. We are treating them as terrorists, just like we do Al-Qaeda or ISIS. People pay for this destructive act of violence, and those people are going to be brought to justice now that we have the authorities we need to go after them.
Wow.
Based on the indictment, when police began to respond to the suspect, Arnold, yelled, "Get to the rifles." The indictment explained that seconds later, Arnold opened fire on the officers, striking the Alvarado officer in the neck while the unarmed correctional officer ducked and ran for cover. The wounded officer fell to the ground but was able to return a few shots. Then Arnold continued to fire additional rounds until his rifle jammed. The attackers then fled the scene. Today, Kash Patel also confirmed that FBI agents will receive pay amid the ongoing government shutdown. Patel posted on X, saying, "FBI special agents will keep getting paid because we prioritize the people who protect this country." And also today, the Department of Homeland Security announced that an Illinois police officer who was living in the United States illegally was arrested by ICE officers today. Goulet is an illegal immigrant from Montenegro. He was working as a sworn police officer with the Hanover Park Police Department, and he was taken into custody as a part of Operation Midway Blitz. Federal authorities said that Bajovic was in the U.S. on a tourist visa that required him to depart by March 31st, 2015. Over a decade later, he was still illegally in the U.S. According to the DHS, as an officer, Bajovic was approved by the Pension Fund Board of Trustees in January of 2025, and he was eligible to receive a starting salary of just under $79,000. President Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin on the phone today, just one day before Zelensky's visit to the White House. President Trump called their conversation very productive and said that the two spent most of their time discussing trade between the U.S. and Russia once the war with Ukraine is over. During the call, which lasted for 2 hours, they also agreed that a meeting of their high-level advisors with Secretary of State Marco Rubio representing the U.S. will take place next week. The location of the meeting remains unclear. Then, President Trump and Putin will meet in Budapest, Hungary, to see whether they can bring an end to the war in Ukraine.
You also posted about your call with President Putin today, and you spoke about the meeting in Hungary with him. Do you have a timeline or a date set for when?
Yeah, I would say within 2 weeks or so. Pretty quick. Marco Rubio is going to be meeting with his counterpart, as you know, Lavrov, and they'll be meeting pretty soon. They're going to set up a time and a place very shortly. Maybe it's already set up. They've already spoken. And I thought it was a very good phone call. I thought very productive. But I'll be meeting with President Putin, and we'll make a determination. Tomorrow I'm meeting with President Zelensky, and I'll be telling him about the call. I mean, we have a problem. They don't get along too well, those two, and it's sometimes tough to have meetings, so we may do something where we're separate but equal. We'll meet and talk parties, but this is a terrible relationship the two of them have, and it's one of those things. I've seen things that nobody would believe, but this is one of them. So we're going to be meeting in Hungary. Viktor Orban is going to be hosting, and it's really something that's time.
Hungary Prime Minister Viktor Orban says that the preparations for the U.S.-Russia peace summit are already taking place. Yesterday, we reported on the joint press conference that President Trump held with the FBI and the DOJ at the White House after outlining the administration's achievements and upcoming plans alongside FBI Director Kash Patel, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. President Trump took questions from reporters. In one question and answer, President Trump confirmed that he authorized covert CIA operations in Venezuela.
Why did you authorize the CIA to go into Venezuela? And is there more information you can share about these strikes on the alleged
Well, I can't
drug
do
busts in
that,
the
but
Caribbean?
I authorized for two reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy. And as soon as I heard that, I said, a lot of these countries, they're not the only country, but they're the worst abuser. And they've entered they've allowed thousands and thousands of prisoners, mental institution, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, emptied out into the United States. We're bringing them back, but that's a really bad, and they did it at a level that probably not, many countries have done it, but not like Venezuela. They were down and dirty. And the other thing are drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela.
And when asked whether the CIA's mandate includes authority to assassinate Venezuelan President Maduro, President Trump said, "I think Venezuela is feeling heat." This development was the newest one in the rising tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela. It followed the tariffs that target countries buying Venezuelan oil and the strikes on the drug boats off the waters of Venezuela. The Pentagon struck a fifth boat 2 days ago that was linked to drug trafficking. According to the Trump administration, Maduro leads a narco state that enables large-scale drug trafficking into the United States, an allegation that Maduro denies. The United States also placed pressure on Maduro via economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, as well as legal actions. The State Department, back in August, doubled to $50 million its reward for information leading to Maduro's arrest and conviction on drug trafficking charges. The bounty was originally set at $15 million in 2020. Yesterday, President Trump also stated that he's looking at potential land strikes on Venezuela to further deter drug trafficking.
What's the next step in this war on cartels, and are you considering options, are you considering strikes on land?
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control. We've had a couple of days where there isn't a boat to be found. then that I view that as a good thing, not a bad thing. But we had tremendous amounts coming in by boats, by very expensive boats. You know, they have a lot of money, very fast, very expensive boats that were pretty big. And the way you look at it is every boat that we knock out, we save 25,000 American lives. So every time you see a boat and you feel badly, you say, wow, that's rough. It is rough, but if you lose 3 people and save 25,000 people, these are people that are killing our population. Every boat is saving 25,000 lives, and you can see it. The boats get hit, and you see that fentanyl all over the ocean. It's like floating in bags. It's all over the place, and it's a tremendous. We're saving tremendous amounts of lives.
In response, Venezuela claimed that President Trump's comments violated international law and that they were part of an effort to achieve regime change in Venezuela for access to their oil reserves. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Yvonne Gill said in a statement, "Our permanent mission to the UN will raise this complaint with the Security Council and the Secretary General tomorrow, demanding accountability from the United States government." Yesterday, during the press conference at the White House, reporters also asked about President Trump's tariff case that the Supreme Court is set to review on November 5th. And President Trump said that he's planning to attend the Supreme Court oral arguments about this case, and he explained why.
But it was very unfair, and they were tariffing our product. They're keeping out by using tariffs. And we didn't use them, but I used them. And now we made one of the great deals with your $650 billion they pay us, and we've evened it out. It's really a good thing to see. And you have to understand, they've all signed. Japan, South Korea. I mean, South Korea, $350 billion up front. Japan, $650 billion. And they've all agreed to it. They're all happy. But before, it was a total ripoff. And if we don't have the use of tariffs, we have no national security. This country will have no financial security, will not have national security. And the people that brought the lawsuit are people that are aligned with foreign nations that are now being treated fairly as opposed to just ripping us off and ripping us asunder. So, if we are not allowed to use what other people use against us, there's no defense. It'll be a disaster for America. That's why I think I'm going to go to the Supreme Court to watch it. I've not done that, and I had some pretty big cases. I think it's one of the most important cases ever brought, because we will be defenseless against the world. Okay?
Sitting presidents don't normally attend Supreme Court arguments, but President Trump said that he will be in the audience for this occasion. The Supreme Court hearing on November 5th will be for 2 consolidated cases that are known as Learning Resources Incorporated versus Trump and Trump versus VOS Selections Incorporated. If the court rules in favor of the cases, then the tariffs by the Trump administration will not be struck down, and the Department of Treasury will not be forced to issue tariff-related rebates. Another major topic that President Trump is focused on these days is the ending of the war in Ukraine. Yesterday, reporters asked about the possible conversations between President Trump and Modi at the upcoming summit of Southeast Asian countries in Malaysia this month. And upon answering that question, President Trump announced a major breakthrough with India and about his administration's efforts to end the war in Ukraine.
What were the conversations like with Prime Minister Modi and the other?
I think they were great. He reported to me that he's a great man, you know. Modi is a great man. That he loves Trump. Now, I don't know if the word love, I don't want you to take that any different. I don't want to destroy his political career, okay? But you have to understand, I've watched India for years. It's an incredible country. And every single year you'd have a new leader. I mean, some would be in there for a few months, and this was year after year after year. And my friend has been there now for a long time, and he's assured me there will be no oil purchased from Russia. I don't know, maybe that's a breaking story. Can I say that? Would you say? There will be no oil. He's not buying his oil from Russia. It started. You know, you can't do it immediately. It's a little bit of a process, but the process is going to be over with soon. And all we want from President Putin is stop this. Stop killing Ukrainians and stop killing Russians, because he's killing a lot of Russians. It makes it much easier. And they're not going to buy. They assured me they will, within a short period of time, they will not be buying oil from Russia. And they'll go back to Russia after the war's over.
India has been the target of sizable tariffs this past summer. President Trump initially imposed a 25% tariff on India's imported products entering the United States because neither side could reach a trade agreement. Shortly after that, President Trump slapped an additional 25% levy on India due to its purchases of Russian crude. President Trump's announcement about India came just days after President Trump's new pick for Indian Ambassador Sergey Gore met with Prime Minister Modi to discuss defense, trade, and technology. And it appears that Japan is also taking similar steps. Yesterday, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that Japan is expected to stop imports of Russian energy. Bessent met with Japanese Finance Minister Kato yesterday during the annual meeting of the International Monetary Fund. Then Bessent posted on X saying that the two officials addressed key aspects of the U.S.-Japan economic relationship, including the current Japanese administration's position on Russian energy. Kato also said that Japan will do what it can based on the basic principle of coordinating with G7 countries to achieve peace in Ukraine in a fair manner. Earlier this month, the G7 tightened economic pressure on Russia with tougher sanctions against countries that still buy Russian oil. Japan is one of the world's largest energy importers, and it has long been a major customer of Russia. Last year, it imported about $3.8 billion worth of mineral fuels from Russia, including coal, liquefied natural gas, and refined petroleum products. Actually, the United States has been urging even more countries to stop purchases of Russian energy, but it's China that is Russia's largest customer with about 2 million barrels per day.
It is the purchase of Russian oil by China that fuels the Russian war machine. China buys 60% of Russian energy. They buy 90% of Iranian energy. So who is fueling the Russian war machine?
So Bessent urged China to stop buying Russian oil or face a 500% tariff.
But 85 U.S. senators are willing to give President Trump the authority to put up to 500% tariffs on China for the purchase of Russian oil.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced yesterday that they're withholding $40 million from California in transportation funding following an investigation that found California failed to comply with the federal English language proficiency requirement for truck drivers. This is the federal fund that the administration granted California from its Motor Carrier Safety Assistance Program. But now the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration will withhold the fund. This fund was granted to California for conducting roadside inspections, traffic enforcement, safety audits of trucking companies, and public education campaigns. Duffy posted on X saying, "The Golden State thinks it's okay to ignore the U.S. Department of Transportation's English language requirements for truckers. You can play all the games you want, but not at the expense of American lives." Duffy also said that California was the only state that refuses to ensure truck drivers can read road signs and communicate with law enforcement. He said, "Let me be clear. This is valuable money that should be going to the great men and women in California law enforcement who we support. Governor Newsom's insistence on obstructing federal law has tied my hands." Duffy previously warned states that did not meet Trump administration's new English language standards for truck drivers that they could lose federal grant funding. California, Washington, and New Mexico were given until September 26 to comply with the new federal rules that require truck drivers to be proficient in English. But Dianne Crofts-Palaio, who is the spokeswoman for California Governor Gavin Newsom, denied the accusations. Palaio said that California's licensed commercial drivers had a fatal crash rate nearly 40% lower than the national average. Also, California has started to make some changes recently. Starting from September 29th, California's Department of Transportation issued an emergency ruling that prohibits the state from issuing or renewing limited-term legal commercial driver's licenses to non-citizens. The rule applies to people who are legally in the United States but who are not permanent residents or citizens. That includes people with certain work visas and approved or pending asylees and refugees. In addition, California's Transportation Agency wrote a detailed letter to the Transportation Department on September 25th. According to the letter, California was complying with federal laws and regulations, including the English language proficiency requirement. The letter stated California law includes an independent requirement of English language proficiency for commercial drivers. Moreover, under California regulations, the entire commercial vehicle road test must be conducted in English. Now, to restore the funding, Duffy said, California is required to adopt and actively enforce a law, regulation, standard, or order that meets the federal English language requirement for commercial drivers. Also, during roadside inspections, state inspectors must test drivers' English proficiency and remove from service those who do not pass. Earlier this year, we reported that concerns about foreign language speaking truck drivers grew after Indian national Harjinder Singh was accused of killing 3 people in Florida by making an illegal U-turn back in August. Despite being in the country illegally, Singh obtained commercial driver's licenses in both California and Washington, but he reportedly failed English and road tests. Also in the latest news, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE agents, arrested several illegal immigrants with commercial truck driver licenses on Tuesday in an operation across Oklahoma. In a 3-day operation in September, ICE worked with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol and made about 520 contacts. ICE also performed investigations into the records of foreign-born individuals who were encountered by Highway Patrol officers. And as a result, 120 illegal immigrants were arrested by ICE agents, many of whom held commercial driver's licenses. At least 91 of those arrested had a commercial driver's license, and 44 of them were issued by California. And they were operating a commercial vehicle. Also, ICE agents arrested another 27 illegal immigrants who were traveling in passenger vehicles, while another 2 were arrested at a marijuana cultivation site nearby. According to ICE, 39 of the arrested people were from India, 13 were from Uzbekistan, 12 were Chinese, 6 were from the country of Georgia, and the rest came from more than a dozen other countries. Senior British government officials warned as early as 2023 that Chinese authorities were conducting large-scale espionage operations against the UK. Yesterday, the British government released 3 key witness statements that were made by Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Collins, confirming this fact. Last month, the Crown Prosecution Service, the CPS, abruptly dropped charges in a Chinese Communist Party espionage case sparking political controversy. The case involved 2 British citizens, former parliamentary researcher Christopher Cash and teacher Christopher Berry, who were accused of gathering intelligence for the Chinese Communist Party between 2021 and 2023. 32-year-old Berry and 29-year-old Christopher Cash were arrested in March of 2023. They were charged with obtaining, collecting, recording, publishing, or disseminating materials that are favorable to a foreign state. Cash, a parliamentary researcher, reportedly worked for the China Research Group and obtained data related to several Conservative Party MPs. According to documents that were released by the Prime Minister's office, Matthew Collins, the current Deputy National Security Advisor, submitted 3 written statements to prosecutors in December of 2023, February 2025, and August of 2025. In a statement from December 2023, Collins stated that the Chinese intelligence services were conducting large-scale espionage operations against the UK, including those working in His Majesty's government industries or on research of particular interest to the Chinese state. He went into detail about the allegations against Cash and Berry. Collins noted that according to information provided by counterterrorism police, the Chinese successfully recruited Barry as an intelligence operative and instructed him to leverage his relationship with Cash to infiltrate the China Research Group in Congress. This testimony laid the foundation for the prosecution's indictment of the two individuals last April, and it marked the first official determination that Chinese intelligence activities directly threaten British interests. In a document dated February 2024, Collins said, China and the UK both benefit from bilateral trade and investment, but China also presents the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. The third affidavit was submitted in August of 2025, just 1 month before the case was dismissed. Collins said, the Chinese intelligence services are highly capable and conduct large-scale espionage operations against the UK to advance the Chinese state interests and harm the interests and security of the UK. He specifically mentioned that the British government believes Beijing orchestrated the cyber attacks against the UK Electoral Commission between 2021 and 2023. He said the Chinese activities threaten the UK's economic prosperity and resilience and the integrity of our democratic institutions. This document took a harsher tone than the previous one, yet it maintained the position that the UK should maintain constructive economic relations with China. He also said, it's important for me to emphasize, however, that the UK government is committed to pursuing a positive relationship with China to strengthen understanding, cooperation, and stability. The government's position is that we will cooperate where we can, compete where we need to, and challenge where we must, including on issues of national security. The CPS stated that the case was dismissed on September 15th due to a lack of formal government documentation proving that China, the Chinese Communist Party, was defined as a national security threat at the time of the incident, resulting in the evidence failing to meet the required standard. The opposition conservatives, who were in power when the men were charged in April of 2024, have blamed the current Labour government, claiming it was too weak to stand up to Beijing on a crucial matter of national security. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition Conservative Party, accused Prime Minister Keir Starmer of concealing the truth during a parliamentary question session. She said, it is simply unbelievable that he is trying to say the last government did not classify China as a threat. She said that in 2021, the Conservative government's integrated review described China as the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. Badenoch also said that in November of 2022, MI5 Director General Ken McCallum publicly classified China as a threat. Starmer has insisted that his government is not responsible for the trial collapsing and has sought to blame the previous Conservative government, which lost power in July of 2024. Meanwhile, Bloomberg reported, citing former senior British security officials, that Chinese state-sponsored hacking groups have systematically infiltrated the UK government's classified computer networks over the past decade, obtaining vast amounts of internal documents classified as official sensitive and secret. These include policy drafts, diplomatic cables, and private communications between officials. Sources described the Chinese Communist Party's infiltration of the UK government's network as persistent and relentless. One major breach involved a London-based data center that once stored sensitive government information. The facility was sold to a company linked to the Chinese Communist Party during the Conservative Party's tenure, raising serious security concerns. A British government spokesperson emphasized that the most sensitive government systems remain secure. However, multiple security experts pointed out that these cyber attacks demonstrate that Beijing does indeed pose a substantive national security threat to the UK. In 2023, the UK Parliament witnessed intense internal debates over its China policy following the parliamentary researcher spy case. While the current Labour government continues to condemn Beijing's espionage activities, it simultaneously emphasizes dialogue and cooperation to prevent a complete deterioration of Sino-British relations. A cabinet source revealed that Ollie Robbins, a senior official at the Foreign Office, is currently visiting Beijing to push forward the renovation plan for the British Embassy in China. Meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party is applying to build a new large embassy in London. The Starmer administration has previously faced repeated scrutiny from within the party and parliament over its efforts to advance diplomatic engagement with the Chinese Communist Party. The exposure of this espionage case and cybersecurity crisis has further intensified the internal and external pressures on its foreign and security policies. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.